What is going on, guys? You are watching me, Token Steve, and today we're going to be rebuilding this turbocharger. This is a BorgWarner S259 turbocharger built by Bullseye Performance. I got it with low miles, but I suspect it's leaking a little bit around the seals. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using a rebuild kit to put the whole thing back together and take it back to the condition it was when it was brand new. The actual turbocharger compressor wheel and turbine wheel are both in great shape, so I don't need to replace those. But what I do need to do is make sure that all the seals and the journal bearings inside of this turbo are ready to go before I put it on my vehicle. So follow along and I'll show you all the steps required to rebuild your turbocharger. Alright, before we begin, you're going to need some specific tools in order to finish this project. First, you're going to want a hammer. I'm using an 11/16 wrench, a 1/2 inch wrench, a 13mm wrench. These might vary a little bit. You'll also need something that you can use as a pick. I'm using a small flathead screwdriver. You'll also want red Loctite and a set of C-clip removers. Finally, before you begin on this project, you're also going to make sure that you have a rebuild kit. This rebuild kit I got specifically from Bullseye Performance for this turbocharger. However, you can go to eBay and get a rebuild kit for somewhere between $30 and $50. So I'm also using white lithium grease and a Brillo pad. Alright, so let's get started on this project. First, I'm going to need to begin by removing the actual turbine housing here. So I'm going to be using my 13mm wrench and loosening up the bolts on here. So this is where our hammer is going to come in useful here. I'm going to go ahead and tap away at this a little bit, get it loose. Looks like that's done the trick. And here we go. All right. Now I'm just going to go ahead and set aside the turbine housing. And here we go. Here's our center section, ready to rock. So now I'm going to go ahead and taking a look at this, we should just be able to remove these three mounts right here. Alright, so this will be about the same as on the other side. I'm just going to use our hammer. I'm going to tap loose. There we go. Alright, so now you can see we've got our nice, cleanly removed center section. You can see we've got the actual compressor side housing. I'm just going to go ahead and set it aside. We've got a nut up here. We've got another nut on the back here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to put two wrenches on here, one on here and one on here, and remove them. Now something to note is that these are actually reverse threaded. So instead of righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, it's going to be lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. So you want to make sure that you're not trying to over-tighten this. You want to make sure you're being very careful about removing this whole thing while you're doing it. There we go. Didn't take too much effort. Alright, there we go. So now I can just go ahead and remove our compressor wheel. There we go. All good to go. All set. So with that removed, I can now pull back on the turbine side and the turbine shaft will come out. In this case, it did come along with the heat shield here. So you can see that's there. At this point, we're ready to start looking at actually removing the plates from over here. So that's where our C-clip remover is going to come in handy. And now, we should be able to use our pick here to actually pull up and around on the distribution plate. Alright, so here we go. The shield is off. You can see, very carefully, just remove that oil distribution plate, or the oil shield here. So that's out. And now, you see that we've got our actual plate. Okay, there we go. So here's our actual oil distribution plate. You can see where the oil comes in and it moves it around. You'll also note that my guide here actually has a crack in it. So let's set that to the side. Now we've got a much smaller pin in here, and this is what actually is the retainer for the journal bearings themselves. So let's go ahead and take our tool. Alright, there we go. So here's my C-clip. It's been removed. Move that to the side. Now, using this, again, very carefully, now that that retaining clip is out, be able to just pull the actual bearing out. Just pull it out. Alright, so there's our bearing. This is one of two journal bearings that's actually used in the turbocharger to spin that wheel. So we'll just set that one to the side now. And now, with all of that out, you can see there's pretty much nothing in there. So we're good to go on that side. Now basically on this side, we're doing the exact same thing. Again, there's another C-clip, and we're going to be removing that C-clip and removing the journal bearing that's on the inside of it. Alright, I tried to get away, but here's my other C-clip. So that is removed as well. Now the same thing should apply on this side. The journal bearing should lift right out. So here's our other journal bearing out and free. Again, it looks like it's in okay shape. Yeah, it looks like it's in okay shape still, but it's definitely time to change them up, and the kit that I purchased did come with new ones, so there's no reason not to change them out. Now at this point, we've removed pretty much everything. Remember, we've removed the journal bearing with the C-clip from this side. We've also removed the oil distribution cap and cover from here, along with the turbine wheel, the compressor wheel. And on this side, we've removed the heat shield, we've removed our journal bearing, we've pulled the whole assembly out of here too. So now it's basically empty. And at this point, this is a really good time to clean this whole thing off, because everything's apart. There's really nothing in here that you need to be worried about so much still. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'll go ahead and clean this whole thing up, clean all of the parts up, and then we'll come back again and we'll actually begin the reassembly process. Now at this point, we've cleaned everything up, and so we're ready to begin reassembly on our turbocharger. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn it over, and so we're going to be basically going backwards from where we were before. So what I want to do first is I want to put back together again the turbine side, or the exhaust side of the turbocharger, CHRA here. So in order to do that, we're going to need a couple of things. First, we're going to need our new journal bearings, and we're also going to need our C-clips. In order to start putting these in, we need to ensure first that they're properly lubricated, and I'll do that using my white lithium grease here. Now I'm just using WD-40 Specialist white lithium grease. This is good for bearings and whatnot. Assembly lubricant is excellent if you've got some of it. I discovered that I did not have any of it, but I think that this should work just fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to coat the outside of our bearing here and just kind of make sure that we've got adequate covering on the bearing, and then we can go ahead and put it back down in, and we can put our C-clip connector back. As you can see, this grease is it's a very fine grease, so it's not something real heavy, because I want to make sure that these oil pathways in the bearing here are not going to be impeded at all. Just going to go ahead and drop that in. There we go, and it moves right down in there, no problem at all. Our C-clip is in on this side and ready to go. Now we'll go ahead and flip it over. Here's my new journal bearing here. I'll go ahead and lubricate it up a little bit. We'll go ahead and put this down in. And as with the last one, the bearing goes right in. to actually get it in. So there we go. All right. So now at this point, we're ready to put back in our oil distribution plate. So you remember our old bearing distribution plate had this piece in here, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's a big crack in there. You know, it's probably just from wear and heat, forcing it to crack over time. So we're definitely replacing that bit. So what I've got right here is I've got our new distribution plate, and now our shield. I'm actually going to be putting it in, and it just pushes right in here. Now you'll notice what I kind of pointed out before is there is this little D10 right here, and what this is it actually is an alignment hole. There's a little pin that's down in here, and some turbos have 2 of these pins, but this one only has 1, but of these little alignment bits. And so when you put it down there, make sure that this hole lines up with that alignment pin, and we can go straight down. All right, perfect. So it's down on the pin there. Now you can see this doesn't move. It's limited in where it can move. This plate is all set up and good to go. So at this point, we've got the actual shield. The shield will go down in this hole right here. Now, you'll see on here, and I didn't mention it earlier, but you can pop this bit out. And so you're going to want to make sure that that's all cleaned up. And at the same time, you'll see it's also got this gasket in here. So we'll be taking this gasket out and putting a new one in. And then when you're doing this, just again, be careful that you don't accidentally score or damage the part. So I've got our new gasket here. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Just run my fingers around it. Pops right into place. Good to go. And now this, you will see there's this little gasket bit. And my kit did come with a replacement for this, so we'll be replacing that while we're at it. All right, here we go. So I've got this clip out right here. It's just a little metal clip. I'll clean this up just a little bit. And we've got our new one. And really it's not too difficult to get in. Just kind of work it around your finger. There it goes, clips right into place. That will clip or push right into here. So I'll go ahead and put it down, straight down in there. There we go. You feel it pop into place. So now that you've got this in place, we're going to take that big C-clip and we're going to put it back into the groove down in here. Now you will note that the C-clip itself is a little indented here, and so when we put it back in, we're actually going to make sure that that rounded edge is facing down into here. That's all set up. In order to complete putting this together, I'm actually going to turn it over once again. Put our heat shield in place. The clip in here is getting old, and that's apparently what the reason for all of this passing right here. So what I'm going to do is I can see there's the divot right there where this becomes loose at. I'm actually going to put my little screwdriver in on the back side of this. And again, be very careful when you're dealing with this, because the last thing you want to do is hit those fins and potentially cause damage to your turbine wheel. This is definitely one of the more expensive pieces of this whole process. So we've got the ring off right here. Now inspect this real closely, because you're going to want to make sure that there's no debris or anything like that inside of this groove. So it looks like it's clean and good to go. And I've got my new ring right here. Just going to go ahead and slide it up. So now that the retaining ring is located in right here, all we need to do is put it down through here. We're well lubricated there. I'm going to go ahead and keep this moving down. Wonderful. So now, you'll see we've gotten, the shaft goes all the way through here, but it's not actually seated yet. What we're going to do is I'm going to hold this with 2 hands and just push in. Now at this point, it's time to go ahead and put back on our compressor wheel. So I'll slide that into place. Before we put on our nut, I'm going to take a little bit of our red Loctite here, just because we want to make sure that's not going to back itself off over time. And I'll just put a dab on there, and that's going to help this retain and make sure that our one point of failure right here doesn't actually cause us any problems. So I'll go ahead and tighten this down, and again we're going counterclockwise with this because it's counter-threaded. Just going to snug it up real good, and again, since it's got that thread locker on there, it should not come off. Now, the last thing that we do before we're going to be putting our actual compressor housing back on I'm going to remove this gasket. We'll go ahead and put our new one on. Should fall right back into the groove. There we go. Perfect. Got our nice fresh gasket in there now. We're ready to go ahead and put our compressor housing back on again. Wonderful. Going to go ahead, put my bolts back in here, and I'll snug them up. I'm not going to tighten them up just because, again, I need to fit this on the car and ensure that everything's going in the right direction. All right, there we go. Everything's snugged up, ready to go. Now, on this side, we're going to basically do the exact same thing. Again, be very careful when you're putting the housing down on this, because you want to ensure that you're not going to damage the wheel itself at all. Wonderful. All right, so now that that's taken care of, you're good to go. Just spin the wheel to make sure that it's nice and freely spinning. And it seems to be. And you're all set. All right, guys, and that's how you rebuild your turbocharger. So I hope that you guys found this useful. Again, do this at your own risk. You can always have a professional or someone rebuild it for you, but honestly, for 30 to 50 bucks, you can have your used turbocharger working basically as well as new, and you save yourself a lot of money in the process. So I hope that this works out for you guys. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments section. I'm sure that I or anybody else down in there will be more than happy to help you out. And happy modding.